Welcome to another episode of Leading Our Adventures, your Venturing BSA podcast. I'm Hannah Todd, and I'm honored to be your host today. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. We have a special guest who's going to be talking to us about being a secretary in her crew. We'll have a conversation and learn more about what a crew secretary position looks like in her crew. I'm so excited because I've never had a crew where there's been an officer called the secretary, but we'll learn together. Anne?
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Hi.
How are you doing?
I'm great. I'm ready to hear more about your secretary experience. Do you want to talk a little bit? Oh, thank you for coming. Do you want to talk a little bit about your experience in scouting, kind of get an intro into who you are?
Yeah, so I joined scouting in 2019 when they first started letting girls in. I actually switched troops around 2021. I took a little break from scouting in the middle, but it ended up being really great, and I ended up loving it. I met my best friends through scouts. I became chaplain's aide, was my first leadership role, and then I became scribe, which I really liked. And then I became senior patrol leader, and I was senior patrol leader for 2 terms. And then when I was 15, I decided I wanted to staff at summer camp. During my second year on staff, a friend and I and a couple of other people started talking about a venturing crew to stay connected with other staff members over the school year. And so last August, that same friend found us a charter, and all of us went off and we started having meetings, and I was elected secretary.
Wow, that's so cool. Kind of went from inception to actually happening. That's awesome. Can you explain what the role of venturing crew secretary entails in your crew?
As secretary, I send out emails and handle communication within the crew. We use this app called Band to help us stay connected with each other. However, my role frequently goes beyond this. For example, I have started a social media account for the crew, which I'll talk about in a little bit, which I co-run this account with our crew historian. I also help plan events, and I am currently working on coordinating a service project. One of the great things about venturing is anyone can help plan these events if they want to, as long as they can get it approved by their president and the advisor. So these are not limited to just the secretary or just the president or any of that.
I love it. Teamwork makes the dream work. How did you become interested in being the secretary?
When I was scribe in my old troop, I really loved being scribe. Probably more than I liked being senior patrol leader. Everyone loves being senior patrol leader, and I definitely did enjoy being senior patrol leader. It was really great. But one thing about me is I really love to take notes. I'm the kid who has like all the stationery, all the highlighters. I love to highlight stuff, make it pretty. And then as scribe, I could attend the planning meetings and help all that goes into meetings and plan that. But it's more of a behind the scenes role, which I liked. And I do really think that scribes and secretaries are a really underrated role for a lot of reasons. I picked secretary because it's very similar to scribe in its duties. It was something I had experience doing, and it was something I knew I would enjoy.
I love it. I'm not the person that has all the stationery, and I'm doing really good if I have my notes in different colors because everything's in pencil. But so this is something that was a little bit challenging for me. How do you ensure that things like meeting minutes and like what's your strategy? How do you keep everything?
I like to take notes at the meeting. I'll write down important dates, locations, where things are. And I have this whole giant list of the emails in our crew, and I send them out. But you definitely don't have to take notes on paper if you don't want to. You could take them on your phone. You could type them out on a laptop if you wanted to. Whatever works best for you. The important thing is that you're keeping track of all this information somehow, and you are able to share it with the crew. It doesn't even have to be by email. Like I said, we had an app called Band that we used. Whatever method you can find, as long as you're getting that information to the rest of your crew and everyone is receiving it, then it's good.
Awesome. I know one time when I was Ingram secretary for one meeting, or VP of comms is what we called it. We had a whole Google Drive that we would put and keep and store all of our notes and emails on, that was accessible for the advisors and the VP of communications. It sounds like you have a similar system here.
Yeah, that sounds like a really good idea.
Awesome. Can you tell me a little more about running your social media accounts?
So having a digital presence for your unit is really important. Nowadays, you're obviously not going to send letters to people or post stuff on people's doors. Here's why you should come join our troop. The easiest way for people to learn about your troop is establishing this online presence, because this is where people are. Social media is one of the easiest ways to establish this presence. A lot of scouts already have experience running personal social media accounts, and it's frequently more intuitive and easier to update than running a website. Another really great thing about social media accounts is they can be shared really easily, so people can learn more about the fact that your unit exists. Usually with a website, people won't learn about the website unless they're specifically searching for that website. Whereas with a social media account, it can come up in their feeds and they'll be like, oh, what's this? And they click on the account and they're like, oh, this looks cool. So I'd recommend social media account posting at least once a month, because you want to keep an active presence. You don't want to be like one of those social media accounts that one of those websites that hasn't posted since 2018. Try to post pictures that look fun and will make people interested in your crew.
I love that. You just gave like the purpose of social media accounts for scouts. I think that snapshot could be taken and given to unit leaders and leadership across everywhere. Also, let's talk about, you talked about having fun. What about messaging or DMs, or how does that work?
So one thing that social media accounts can have, but that websites usually don't have, is the direct messaging feature. It's really important when you're using this feature that you follow all YPT guidelines. The easy way to do this is make sure there are 3 people on the account. But I do help run our social media account. There are a couple of other people on there. But several people have messaged me on there, and sometimes there'll be people in the crew, and they'll be like, oh, I had fun at the meeting. But also we'll get DMs from people who are interested in joining the crew. You know, they'll have some questions they want us to answer. We got a DM from one person who was interested in starting a crew of his own, and he wanted to shadow us for a few meetings. So in this way, the DM feature was really helpful in connecting us to other crews and helping establish other crews. I feel like this goes a little without saying, but you do want to keep your DMs professional. Even if it's a friend messaging, maybe it's someone already in the crew, you are still representing the crew. So make sure that you are keeping all of that in mind. Also, watch out for scammers. There have been scammers that have DM'd our Crew 11 account. So be careful with that.
I see. That's another good reason to have other people. So I'm sure you have your advisor on there, and there's no one-on-one kind of talking. There's always that youth protection kind of feature involved in it. I also have found myself looking down to answer a direct message, and someone else has given a response that was even more professional than mine. So that what we did was we took the 2 advisors that were on there, and then the 2 scouts that were running it, our historian and our VP of comms and our president, and we made a group chat and started talking about like, how are we going to respond to this message for youth protection guidelines. Do you have any other can you say that again? Sorry, I didn't hear it.
That's a really good way of delegating that. Because sometimes I'll have that problem too, where it'll be like 2 people having a conversation at the same time who are running the account.
That's fair. That's fair. Do you have any other safety tips?
So there's definitely a lot of resources within Scouts of America. I know there used to be the cyber chip that's kind of been phased out, but there's still many resources, many trainings, and you should definitely use these if you're interested in running a social media account, because they have a lot of tips on how you can stay safe online. And I believe that a lot of them are included with youth protection. So make sure that you are up to date on that before you start a social media account or before you help run a social media account.
I see. One thing that we talked about beforehand is don't post about any big trips before you go on the big trips. You had an example for that too.
Yeah, it's very important. So say that you are going to Yellowstone in 2 weeks. You don't want to make a post that's like, hey, see you all at Yellowstone at 5 p.m. 2 Saturdays from now, because you don't know who else could end up going there. You don't know who's seeing the post. So you always want to wait until after the post has been made, after you have gone through the trip to make the post about that. It's also a good idea to get permission from people before you post pictures of them. I know in some states it's sometimes illegal to post pictures of minor without their parents agreeing. I think Georgia's one of those states, I'm not sure. But research the local laws on this in your area. And even if it's not illegal, it's just a matter of respect. Some people don't like pictures of themselves on the internet and don't want to be posted, so it's always good to ask. And then this kind of goes without saying, but make sure if you're not posting anything that people, you don't want to be offensive to anyone. You don't want to target anyone or single anyone out. Make sure your posts are kind, and obviously don't target specific venturers. Scout is kind, all of that stuff.
I love it. The Scout law and the Scout oath coming out hard here. How could you use social media for recruitment? So we talked about the trips look fun. Do you want to tell me more? Because you have some personal experience with recruiting and social media.
Yeah, so most people, well, maybe not most, a lot of people have private social media accounts that they like to post on. And you probably have followers who are friends from school or maybe friends from other places who maybe aren't in Scouts. And social media can be a really powerful tool for this, because if you're reposting the things that your crew has done and you're showing pictures of this and people are saying, ooh, this is so fun, I might want to join, that's going to make them want to join. So encourage people in your unit to repost these posts. And also, I think Instagram has a new feature where you can make a note on your post. And I noticed after that note feature came out, we had so many more views. There were so many random people liking the post who had nothing to do with Scouts, but it's because adding this note feature, it pushes the post to the top of your followers' algorithms. So encourage people in your crew to interact, to reshare, to add their notes, because that's a really good way to get people to know about your crew.
I see. Okay, coolio. I didn't know about that new hack. I'm gonna go on my phone later and look at that. This is why I need people like you that are very great at social media. And once you have them recruited, or once you have them, do you have your meeting night, or do you have to have them go to your website? How does that work?
In our crew, how recruiting works is they usually come to our meeting and then they can get an application there. When they come to a meeting, it's very important that you're very friendly and welcoming, because obviously if it's a boring meeting or if you're being unfriendly, they're not going to want to go. But usually if they have any questions, we don't say, what time we meet or where we meet on our Instagram, because like we said, you don't know who's going to see that. So we usually have them ask a friend who maybe knows about the crew, or maybe they could, talk to someone directly in the crew who, knows about it, and then they can, help them out with that. They could also email our president or our advisor following YPT, of course.
Of course. They could go to bescout.org and find more information there as well. Can you tell me more about recruiting?
Yeah. So I used to have a really hard time recruiting people, but over the past few years, I've actually invited a lot of people and gotten a lot of people to join venturing. So I got like at least 9 people to come to meetings, and at least 4 of those people became permanent members who come to every meeting. But my trick, I just ask everyone, especially if someone's like, oh, I used to be in Cub Scouts, but I'm not anymore. I'm like, well, you could join venturing. Or if there's someone who's like, oh, I just went camping with my family this week and it was so fun. I was like, if you join our crew, you can go camping every month. But it's really important the way you do this. So you could be like, oh, we're having a meeting. You can come if you want. Or you can be like, hey, we're having a meeting. We'd really love for you to come. There's a big difference in those attitudes. And, by being more positive and really seeming like you want them to come, it's going to make them more likely to because they're going to feel wanted there. It's also important what kinds of meetings you're inviting them to. You don't want them to come to a meeting where they're washing dishes because that's boring. No one really wants to wash dishes every week. They get to wash dishes at home. But if you take them to a fun meeting, maybe you're playing games, that's going to be really awesome. Our crew has a thing called Open House where we'll have games and we'll all bring food and it's really fun. Everyone's really friendly and it's just a good time. It's kind of like a little party that makes everyone hyped to join the crew. Also, if you're complaining to your friends about, people you don't like in your venturing crew, which you should be doing, or things you didn't like in your venturing crew, they're not going to want to go. You want to talk about how much fun you're having, how cool the people in your venturing crew are, how fun the activities you're doing are. And by planning these fun campouts and fun activities during meetings, it's going to make people want to come if you tell them about it.
It's like a game with a purpose. One of the things you were talking about and seemed very passionate when it comes to recruiting as secretary, or it might be part of your role as secretary, is making it more accessible, right?
Yeah, so the first thing with this, a lot of scouts have trouble getting rides. So because I drive now, I have my license, this is really easy. I can help pick up people and drive them, and we can usually work out a carpool situation. I know this isn't possible for everybody, and maybe people live further away, this might not be possible. But my venturing crew is 40 minutes away from my house, and there is no way my friends' parents are driving them 40 minutes to the venturing crew. So be aware of obstacles like this they may have in coming to meetings, even if they don't explicitly mention them, and offer them a ride, offer them a way to get there. But some other things are, financial obstacles. So, for example, fundraisers are a great thing to do for these financial obstacles. If people in your your venturing crew cannot afford the fees, the uniforms, the books, the trips, there are scout books, and the way to raise these scout bucks is fundraisers. So one of my favorite things to do, one of my favorite fundraisers, this is something we do in our scout troop. There's a stadium near our troop where they have sports games and concerts and all of that. And then our troop will serve concessions at these events, and we'll get a bunch of money from that. And I earned like $100, and I got to see Red Hot Chili Peppers. Like, it was a win in every way. It did not feel like work. But there's other things too you could do. There have been barbecues, popcorn, camp cards, car washes, bake sales. There are so many ways, so many types of fundraisers. And what I also love about these events is they're teaching financial responsibility to the venturers. But you could also offer scholarships or sponsorships to scouts who maybe can't afford it. And then finally, uniform closets, offering used uniform for people who maybe outgrown them or maybe have left venturing. Uniforms are really expensive, and not everyone can afford them. You don't want money to be a barrier to scouts, so offering all of these things can be a really great way to make your scout troop more accessible.
I love it. I love it a lot. Going back to the giving youth rides, Make sure you follow the YPT guidelines. Just wanted to let the viewers know. I know you're following them, but wanted to backtrack a little bit and have a shout out to the nice youth protection guide and the drive on safely and all that training. There's a whole little checklist that you go through when driving scouts. But some of those fundraisers I haven't heard about. A little jealous on that Red Hot Chili Peppers experience. Another thing when it comes to youth driving youth, there's youth protection guidelines to follow. Some have age restrictions, some have different policies. I'm not familiar with all the driving policies right now because I have to get like my book out and then read through them every time I'm about to go driving. But make sure your crew has a policy for youth driving youth and adult participants specifically. And now that I've had a little hot, spotlight talking about driving, let's get back to your next topic. Kind of starting to close it up. We've talked about a lot of things. We've talked about starting social media. We've talked about recruiting. We've talked about retention. You've talked about your social media platforms. And I learned that you like to take notes. So that's pretty cool. Did you want to say something?
Oh, I just really like to take notes. There's so many colors of highlighters. They're very nice.
I love it so much. Now, this next question is going to be a little goofy if it's like the colors of highlighters I get to use at career meetings. But the question I was wondering is what you enjoy most about being secretary in your venturing crew.
So as secretary, I get to work very closely with the president to help plan things and communicate, and I really love that. It's really nice being secretary because you're in charge of connecting the crew. And personally, I really love connecting. I really love talking with people and, sending out emails and making sure everyone is on the same page, making sure everyone is included in the conversation is really great. Being secretary is a very strong leadership role in the crew, and you still have a lot of opportunities to influence things and plan things and all of that, but you're still not completely the center of attention, which personally, I kind of like the degree of separation that I have between being like completely in charge and still having a role in things. And then, it does require some degree of organization, which if you look at my room, I probably don't seem very organized. But somehow it's easier for me to keep my school life and my scout life organized, which I think as long as you're able to do that, being secretary is a great role, as long as you have a little bit of organization there.
I see. Note to self, being secretary does not require a clean room. Ooh, that was close. But organization is such a great role. And I think it's such a great role for you because you're such a people person and you like taking notes and you're really, really good at it from what I understand. And last question, it's the hardest question of the day, Anne. Are you ready?
I think so. I hope so.
Okay. Is there anything else you want to share with the world of venturing while you have a second kind of thing?
So I would just say that there's no one right way to run a venturing crew. There are basically an infinite number of right ways, and some of these tips may work for your unit and some of them may not. Overall, the important thing about venturing is that you're being safe and you're having fun. And as long as you're fitting into those two categories, you're going to attract a lot of people and you're going to have a great crew and it's going to be awesome.
I love it. Snaps for Anne. Great job. Thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights. And thank you, the viewers, for joining us on this episode of Leading Our Adventures. And I want you guys to remember, whether you're aspiring to achieve the rank of Eagle Scout, take on different leadership skills, climbing your summit to the summit rank, earning Ranger, working on trust, just having fun in a venturing crew. Remember that venturing offers endless opportunities for growth, adventure, and fellowship. if you would like to join a venturing crew, start a venturing crew, there's lots of resources on venturing.org, or you can go to bscout.org, type in your zip code, and choose a venturing crew to join. Who knows? Maybe you can be like Anne with her organization skills, recruiting skills, and all the other wonderful things that she shared. We'll catch you next time. Until next time, stay adventurous and keep leading the way. Thanks for joining, y'all. Bye.